Now that you've been granted access to GitHub Copilot, let's explore how to get the most out of the tool. The first step is to install the appropriate extension or plugin. The exact steps for this will vary depending on the IDE that you're using, but in the case of Visual Studio Code, you'll go to the extensions, do a search for Copilot, and then select Install. Copilot makes suggestions based on the context that it sees. This includes the files that you've opened and interacted with, the packages and libraries that have been installed, the code that you're writing, and comments that you add. If you notice that Copilot is giving you relatively generic or vague suggestions, this is typically because it just needs a little bit more context. You can use a comment, for example, to help point it in the right direction and describe exactly what it is that you're looking for. Copilot really shines when it comes to dealing with repetitive or boilerplate code. When we think, for example, about creating a data model, this is relatively repetitive, and typically you would find yourself copying and pasting from somewhere else. With Copilot, I can describe with a comment what I need, and then get a suggestion for a class that matches the description that I provided. Always remember that the suggestions from Copilot are exactly that. They're suggestions. This means that even if you accept them, you're allowed to modify them to ensure that they are set up and going to run the way that you expect. Additionally, you want to run any code, be it code that you've created or code that Copilot has suggested, through the normal processes that you would with any code. And this includes running it through security checks, code quality, linters, etc. As a developer, there's a lot of different frameworks and bits of syntax that, well, we don't always quite remember. And with Copilot, I can describe my scenario and get a suggestion. So let's take a regular expression. I can describe in natural language what it is that I'm looking to validate, and Copilot will then make a suggestion for me. And this allows me to avoid having to leave to go look up what that syntax might be, do a search or otherwise. I can stay in the zone and in my IDE. Depending on the scenario, Copilot will provide multiple suggestions. You can cycle through these either by utilizing keyboard shortcuts or the UI, and then accept the one that most closely matches what it is that you're trying to do. Copilot is at its best when working with languages and frameworks where there's a large publicly available code base. You may find that the suggestions aren't necessarily to the quality that you might want for languages that are more obscure or where that level of a publicly available code base doesn't exist. Using Copilot does not mean that you need to completely change the way that you code. You can use comments to describe your scenario and get suggestions, and you can also just keep writing code like you normally would. That as you add in functions, as you add in methods, as you add in classes, as you write code, Copilot will be making suggestions. And you will find that after a little while, after a little bit of practice, that you'll be able to interact very naturally with GitHub Copilot, your AI pair programmer.